Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for our inaugural Advanced Native Political Leadership conversation on Facebook Live 2021. We're very excited to have our first guest of the year. It's not our inaugural Facebook Live, it's our inaugural 2021 Facebook Live. And we're so excited to have Christina Haswood, Representative Christina Haswood from the great state of Kansas, joining us, newly elected, new leadership. It's great to have new conversations coming in, especially today of all days. Let me introduce Christina just a little bit before we reflect on today's events. She works currently for a day job at the University of Kansas COVID Call Center, where she's taken calls from all the community members and helping folks navigate this pandemic, which has affected all of our communities, as highlighted by not only today's events, but the last few days' events with the COVID memorial being set up in Washington, D.C. Christina won her election here in Kansas this November, her first time running for state representative. She has a master's degree in public health management from the University of Kansas Medical Center, and she's joining us live from, where are you joining us from, Christina?
Lawrence, Kansas.
Kansas, awesome. I love Lawrence. Did you get a chance at all to watch today's historic events unfold as we move forward with the vice president that looks more like us today?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch it live. I did have committee meetings throughout the day, and also I don't have satellite or my cable hooked up. I just have like Netflix and Hulu. So I actually got to observe some playback on social media, Twitter, Facebook, also at the gym too. I had a good couple hours to kill time before the next committee meeting. So today was an extremely historic day, and another reason why representation matters.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like folks have really talked a lot about representation. We've talked about representation and how important it is within politics and our systems of governance here at Advance. And I know it's exciting to see us reflected in these leadership calls, and here, like you today, you were at work, you had to represent, you had to go in and push for what you believe in is the change that we need in our communities. And I feel like my own nervous system likes seeing a part of me or pieces of me reflected, back to me. I think a lot of folks do that, but that representation isn't the end all, right? Like, it's the work that we have to continue pushing forward. But let's, bring it back to you too. Like, it's really important. You're the is it the third or the fourth Native?
So I came in with Representative Stephanie Byers at the same time. So we're the third and fourth.
Ah, thank you for that clarification. And I think it really matters that, we have American Indian women elected, but to you, why was it important to run and get elected?
I just want to start off saying that, I think representation matters. And I say that because I grew up not seeing a politician that looks like me. So for the longest time, I thought this job title, this position wasn't for me. If I were to get into politics, it'd have to be tribal politics. And I'm an urban native who isn't fluent in my Diné language. That was pretty, what we see from history on Navajo Nation, that doesn't go well at all. It doesn't matter what kind of degree or experience you have. There's that barrier. But it wasn't until I saw, Representative Dr. Punkwe Victor's here in Kansas. So about 2019, 2020, she introduced the Missing Murdered Indigenous Peoples bill. I caught wind of it. I think I skipped class that morning to go over to the Capitol because she was asking for support for the press release. And there's a picture of us. You can see that we're all wearing red. We had some representatives from the 4 tribes of Kansas as well come in. And it was surreal to see that, because for me, it was special because the summer before I was in DC with the Native American Political Leadership Program, and I was interning at the National Council of Urban Indian Health, where I got to work with missing murdered Indigenous peoples, but the focus on the urban area, since 70% of us live off the reservation, and many of those who live on the res go to college. So I was trying to figure out that gap. So I went up to Representative Dr. Victors and told her, hey, I did this paper. I feel like I want to help in the urban area, because a lot of times in policy, it's always towards tribal, but then most of us live off the reservation. So there's always this gap, especially with our treaty rights and whatnot. So that was really one of the things that when I saw her up there and I saw her give this press conference, and I saw all of us around, even my old English teacher from Haskell Indian Nations University was there. So it was, and I was in grad school. So it was like this really cool moment. And that really solidified me that, I can see myself in this position one day working as a legislator in Kansas. But before that, it wasn't until Congresswoman Sharice Davids, Congresswoman Deb Haaland won their races, and it really turned, me thinking maybe I should run one day. I don't know. Like, I don't think Kansas would love, accept me until a reality. And even before that, we would always kind of joke about it in our circle, our native circle, like, oh, we should run for office. Oh, we would never win. It was always just kind of this thing that was just, kind of silly, but it turned this dream into a reality. So, seeing that really, really helped me.
Oh, I'm so glad that you're there, though, and sharing a piece of that journey with us. So were you asked to run for office then, or how did you come to that decision?
Yeah, this was, I wanted to run for office. I thought it would be when I was about 40 or 50, after I was, in the nonprofit world. And I've always wanted to work on the Hill too. When I had that internship with NACUI, I got to follow the congressional director, and I just fell in love with that process of meeting with congressional members and staffers and educating them. I know that part of advocacy takes a lot of patience, because pretty much 20 minutes, 15 minutes is just giving a history lesson of, why are we even being here today? And giving them a background history lesson of the issue that we're going to advocate on. So when I got that experience, because my background's in public health, so I'm always doing research and reading papers, writing papers, giving presentations, posters, the academic life. But I was always not really, I guess, happy with the end product, because once you get done with that paper, you don't really see the implementations from that paper. It just kind of goes somewhere. And then when you're doing data collection and you're doing data analysis, these are people, and they ended up on your paper as just a statistic or a number with your paper. So I didn't really like that part. I wanted to see the the rollout of the research and really go into the communities, because when we look at a graph and we say, okay, why does it look like that? We automatically jump to conclusions, but a lot of times the conclusions aren't really what's happening in the community. So I like to go and talk to people, and this is the mixed method approach that I was taught in, to always, do community assessments and to let the community run its own research, and to teach the people in the community to sustain this research methods, and to make sure that we're not making any unethical or immoral decisions, as well as making it culturally appropriate. So this is kind of how I got into public health and politics. I was trying to merge it together without going to law school. Trying to avoid law school. So when I finished grad school, about a month or two before, I was wanting to get more politically active in my party, just because coming off that DC internship, I was just so excited and full of energy. So the first things I started to do was volunteering to get people registered to vote, any party. So I, really put myself out there. And then we were, it was in Kansas City after an evening class. So after class, I just went over to one of the grocery stores and helped them register people to vote. And then I realized that the people that were volunteering to get people registered to vote in a minority community, the volunteers were not, they didn't look like the community. Like, I was the only person of color. I was the only brown girl there. So I started to realize that a lot of this volunteering effort, and we try to volunteer in minority communities, they don't look like us, and that's not how I like to do things. So that's when I started to showing up to things like the representatives will sometimes do like a town hall. So I just started showing up and I followed their Facebook page and went to their events, subscribed to their newsletter, and just sat down and really try to be present. So I guess that kind of gave me, people started to like recognize me because I would be like the only brown person there sometimes. And sometimes I bring my brother with me just because a lot of these spaces are intimidating. So
prepared you too. I mean, you're talking about what you're seeing and experiencing, but it also prepared you to be a better leader by being a better listener and by being responsive to the community that you're a part of. And I think that prepares you best for I should lead, because then you're saying these leaders are not doing what we need them to do. So
yeah, that's true. I mean, being a leader now, being in the shoes now, there's so much to do. So it's really important to have that community line of connection. Like you need people who are active in your community, or even sending a simple email, or just, a simple phone message or a postcard saying like, hey, this is what I want you to advocate on my behalf, or sending some articles or some links or something are probably one of the biggest things that helped me. But yeah, I got asked to run for office.
well, there's a statistic out there. I don't remember exactly what it is anymore, but women need to be asked something like 7 times.
Yes. That statistic, I've heard about it, and it kept like, it's like my 3 a.m. thought, like, yes, I got asked to run. Yes, the statistics out there. Is it good? Should we be breaking that?
Well, maybe I think it's maybe 2 questions now instead of 7. But it when I first started doing leadership development trainings, it was out there, and it was maybe even higher than that women had to be asked like a dozen times to run for office. And I think you and the many that you follow their footsteps and have really broken that to allow folks that self authorization and that self viability to say like, hey, there's women who look like me in this, I can do this too. So stepping forward and taking that ground is incredibly powerful, and I'm so glad you were doing it. But Christina, you also ran in a pandemic, and you shared a lot of your journey with us on social media. I mean, I follow you on Instagram and TikTok. I need to learn how to do TikTok. You are like a master pro at TikTok. But what about what is it about this process that you felt important to share about yourself, but what is it that you also learned about yourself through sharing through social media, the whole running for office and campaign, and really putting yourself out there in a whole new way?
I guess running in a pandemic was crazy, but also I never really volunteered on a campaign. So to me, this was all like, oh, okay. I mean, I volunteered for Sharice Davis's campaign for like 3 weeks, and then I had to drop out because I had to go to school. So that's my campaign experience. But sharing my journey on social media, for me, I didn't really think anybody would really watch. I mean, I hope like the indigenous youth was watching. So that's why a lot of like, I have hashtag native TikTok, hashtag Navajo politician, just to show, because I remember when I was younger, I didn't see anybody who looked like me. And there's people, I think there's a misconception that you need some type of political science degree, or you need a JD after your name, or a PhD, because I know that's how I felt too. I was like, I need like at least a master's degree after my name to have some type of credibility. So I think there's that misconception. I just wanted to really show the realness of my life. I didn't come from wealth, or, none of my family are politically active. None of them were tribal councilmen, councilwomen. And just really kind of showing, I don't really come from this like setup environment. I never been on a board until now. I'm just now figuring things out in the political world, because for the longest time, I didn't think my voice mattered. I cast my first vote when I was, I believe, 22 years old. So I consider myself a late bloomer. I didn't vote when I was right out the gate of 18, just because, I kind of come from a family where we're just like, there's mixed conversations at the dinner table where, we're brown, we're native, they don't care about us. But there's also another conversation of, well, your voice matters, and, look to the history of what our ancestors sacrificed just for even cast this vote. And I think this is common in a lot of our households, especially with the disparities and the oppression. It really gets to us. So, and that was actually one of my campaign attacks against me, that, I didn't vote for Obama, or, I voted for Trump. Well, I cast my first vote and I was going to school at ASU in Arizona. So that's why they came up with this weird attack ad. But also, why did I cast my first vote at 22? Because Hillary Clinton was on the ballot and I wanted to be a part of that history. So I want to encourage other people, yes, get politically active, exercise your right to vote, but it's okay if you haven't voted at all and you're 60 or 70. Yes, the other day with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, my team, we did a day of service, and I saw my office assistant, Sammy Turner, get a guy registered to vote he was probably like 70, and he said he hasn't voted since he was younger, and he was kind of being a little stubborn about it. And she was like, well, don't you care about our roads? Don't you care about our healthcare? She's like, your voice really matters. And she really took that time with him, and we got him registered to vote and making sure that he has the capabilities to vote. I know it's a little weird to register people to vote now since it's kind of an off year, but we emphasize that our school board elections are coming up. So making sure and encouraging people, it's okay, if you're not the 18-year-old who's volunteering on campaigns, your voice still matters.
Absolutely, it does. And those local races make so many decisions that affect our lives. The quality of care, the quality of life that we live, the federal funding that comes through. They're making decisions about it, how it's going to be spent on our schools, how it's going to be spent on our roads and our law enforcement, and all of these other pieces that we need in society. It's pretty incredible that your team is working to get more folks registered to vote, because we do need that across the country, is that we need to keep that alive and that work going, because so often in our communities, tribal communities or underserved communities, it's this parachute approach that right before election, we're going to come in, we're going to send in the volunteers and the workers who don't necessarily look like us, but they're going to get us registered to vote. They're going to give us the information we need to vote for their candidate. And we need to be involved. It's just good citizenship. I mean, whether you're 22 or 75, right? Like, it's just good citizenship to wake up to the system around us. And is that system going to save us? I don't know. We're living our lives day to day, and we're living our lives day to day, butted up against these systems that these politicians are making decisions about: our healthcare, our justice system. I mean, we want to, change the incarceration rate in our communities, and how this looks at the federal level. We got to start knowing about these issues, and how much we care about them will determine how much we change with them, and how much change will happen from that. So it's pretty incredible that you're still just doing the work. But you're talking about, before we went live, you said you have a story to tell about, getting folks coming out to testify at a bill. Can you tell us more about that? Because you're introducing bills for the first time in your life, to make real change happen. Like, tell us what that's like.
So I am a co-sponsor of 3 bills. One of them that we just testified with Representative Dr. Punkwee Victors is HB 2008, which is actually the Missing Murdered Indigenous Peoples bill that I skipped class that morning to help her when she announced it in a press release. So it was a full circle moment. And it was just kind of one of our partner projects. And this would be Kansas's first baby step to addressing missing and murdered Indigenous peoples. It's a step in the right direction. It might not be the big solution that we all want, but I mean, there's always still more work to be done. You asked me, being one of few Indigenous peoples in Kansas, and is it a hard burden? And I told you, I am trying to share this responsibility. And in my district, I have Haskell Nations University. So with this Missing Murdered Indigenous Peoples bill, I asked a couple of our student leaders, William Wilkinson and Alexandria Holder, who's Miss Haskell, if they want to participate in this process and to testify. I asked a couple more Indigenous students from Lawrence High, McKenna White. She also testified, and I walked them through the process. I emailed them Thursday or Friday night, maybe Saturday. I gave them a call Thursday and I said, hey, this is like what's happening. I'm more than happy to walk you through it. So we all worked on it on the weekend, and I think it's a little, I mean, it's confusing, especially now in the Kansas legislature. A lot of our testifying PDFs are not online because there's a lot of technical difficulties. With this week, we were highly encouraged not to come into the Capitol today and yesterday due to the anticipated protesting. So that really kind of put the fire under people to really get this whole technology virtual WebEx thing. So I helped them with the process, and I thought their voices were powerful because missing or Indigenous peoples is one of the things I know the Haskell community is a big part in advocating. So, and introducing bills, I also pre-filed as a co-sponsor to two other bills. HB 2006, which would change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day, as well as HB 2033, which is increasing the minimum wage up to $15 in a 6-year span. And just seeing my name on a bill, even if it's a draft, I posted a TikTok about it of how I really felt. It was surreal. And that first time I got that draft, I sent it to all my staff of my campaign team. I was just like, thank you all for getting me here today. Because in the beginning, I'm saying, I was like a nobody. Like, people were telling me, oh, you're the nobody. And sometimes people were hesitant to, publicly support me. And my campaign team pretty much, I feel like they took a chance on me, and I'm just forever grateful for them. And we're all under 30 years old. So it was really great, powerful, like young energy and movement into my campaign that I'm so grateful for.
Oh, I think there's such a hunger for your voice and voices like yours to get into the system, because we're tired of it. The last few years have really shown us like a huge spotlight on the divisiveness and disparity and those pieces in our country that are are hurting us. It's the systems, and you running for office and many others running for office. I feel like, yeah, we talked about how representation matters, but you're also going to be in a position that upholds the systems that you're also trying to dismantle and deconstruct in a way that helps and improves our communities at a local level and at a national level. I mean, the things like scarcity and competition and gatekeeping when it comes to federal dollars going into local communities or even tribal communities. Those are conversations that are going to be hard to have, but they need to be had because it's affecting people's lives, and not just tribal communities. I mean, when you think about the pandemic and the COVID relief packages, I mean, we were not blind to corporations being funded over people, and that created a huge, again, divide amongst us, saying, shouldn't we be taking care of the American people and not corporations? There's a whole argument there that we probably shouldn't get into with the time that we have. But when it comes to public service and moving forward bills like Indigenous Peoples Day, that's about representation. That's about changing history. That's about acknowledging this painful past that we have in our country and moving forward in a way that acknowledges and honors people in a real way. The missing and murdered Indigenous women, Indigenous peoples bills, we're seeing those, pop up across the country. And I know here in North Dakota, when it was introduced, we realized we didn't have a database for missing people in general. So why would we have one just for missing murdered Indigenous people? So it created this huge conversation about those gaps in our systems and in governance, and led to something that was more beneficial for all of us. So you're right, it's baby steps and taking them forward, but you're doing it in a way that is bringing not just your generation, but that next generation forward too.
I just wanted to add that even in my testimony, I know there's the nameless.gov database that's supposed to be like accessible to the United States. When I searched Native American Indian Alaska Native Kansas, 3 males popped up. And then the Kansas, Bureau of Investigation said, actually, in our system, we have 5 missing currently in Kansas. So it just goes to show that whatever, this thing is supposed to help us isn't correlating with the most up-to-date data. And then we can look at, the Urban Indian Institute, who does this missing or Indigenous women's data collection, how they had difficulty and to even like paying to get the records. It's so inaccessible to just the average citizen.
Yep, it really is, you know, and it's testimony to a system that has to change because it's still treating us as expendable, you know, as if we don't matter. And we do matter. Dang it, we matter, and our voices matter. Our votes count. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's us getting involved. Let's get back to the questions. So, these are real issues, though, and I think you've kind of answered this, but as a Native woman serving in a state legislature, how do you feel about stepping into this role now and the work in front of you? And do you feel that you have support you need to pass the bills that you're introducing from your community and even from your colleagues within the Kansas State Legislature?
You know, thinking about that, one of the, I guess, slap in the face of realities is when I took my oath, and the excitement of I won my campaign turned into another feeling of, you know, I reflect in the Capitol. I took my oath in the House chamber, and I thought to myself, I wonder what kind of conversations, what kind of actions happened in this chamber where we get to vote on if bills and laws pass. How many attempts was there to dehumanize Indigenous peoples here in Kansas? And we had our first caucus meeting in December, and it was in this room called the Old Supreme Court room. And in there's a bunch of pictures of the old Supreme Court judges, and it's nothing but older Caucasian males. And it just gave me this like weird, eerie feeling like, you know, I'm not supposed to be here. This building was not meant for me. And, you know, I mean, do we even know the history of who made that building? So that was when I realized, oh, like, what did I get myself into? But, you know, the support of it, a lot of, and, you know, when I was taught about like policy and advocacy and lobbying with NCUE, and I got to follow the congressional director, she told me, you know, Indigenous issues are nonpartisan or bipartisan. So that's something I've always took with me. And looking at missing murdered Indigenous peoples, we had a lot of great support. We even had support from the district, the Attorney General. We had support from a domestic Kansas Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And there was nobody who opposed during the testifying. We didn't really get negative comments through it. So it was great. And last year it passed unanimously into the Senate, but then COVID ended the session early. So it's really great to see something, you know, that's near and dear to all of our hearts receive bipartisan support. And, you know, when I gave statistics of three of the missing Indigenous peoples are males, I think that really kind of, you know, widened some eyes, because this movement has often, you know, highlighted the women, but also in Navajo Nation too. There's a lot of, you know, males going and being missing. And then a lot of times we see it in Facebook. So, you know, I look forward to the bipartisan work, but also there was also another slap of reality, looking at Kansas and its super majority of Republicans, conservative Republicans, and saying, okay, I need to get to work. But it's really hard during COVID because we want to be as cautious as possible. Looking at the data and being a public health, you know, in my background, the Shawnee County where Topeka is located has been classified as uncontrollable with COVID cases. So I'm trying to do my due diligence and trying to attend committee meetings virtually. Sometimes I'll attend in person, but it's always in the back of my mind, you know, what if? And some of my colleagues refuse to wear a mask. So trying to deal with that and trying to network and try to build relationships has been a little bit harder through online. I mean, I send everybody a postcard to introduce myself, but there's going to be a lot of work. But I strongly believe there's a lot of issues that we can all agree on. We may have different opinions on how to get to that solution. But so far, you know, I'm trying to get to work on that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think, you know, issues that affect our communities don't just affect our communities, they affect everybody else. And when you improve the lives of one part of your community, you're improving the lives of every other part of our community. So it's a holistic approach, right? when it comes to building support around our bills. It's not, I mean, it's not a political party issue when it comes to the public health of our people. We're all dealing with a pandemic. We're all dealing with, the the diffusion of um, resources coming in and out of our communities and in ways that are creating wealth still for others and not for some. So we're still dealing with real issues that affect people's lives.
Mhm.
But how can we support you? I mean, you're the third and fourth, you know, Native representative in the Kansas State Legislature. You're the youngest serving, right? Youngest serving Kansas State Legislator currently.
I'm like the fourth. The youngest is 20, 22, and then me and my office mate were both 26.
You're still
Amongst
young.
the youngest.
You're still young, but you're still blazing a path forward, shared with Representative Dr. Punkawi Victors and others. But those of us who are in Kansas and those of us who are outside of Kansas, how can we support you? How can we help create that shared responsibility and accountability for our public leaders like yourself?
So if you're in Kansas, if you're in my district, please reach out to me. Send me an email, set up a conversation. I'm more than happy to set up a Zoom meeting. I want to hear from you and your issues and priorities. I'd rather hear from my constituents than from a lobbyist or from an organization. I know that they mean well, but I work for District 10 for the people. Those are the people who I work for. If you're in Kansas, still same thing. I would love to hear from you. It's kind of crazy to look at my inbox and see people from other states trying to tell me how to do my job and vote. It's weird. But if you're in the state of Kansas, I would really appreciate you reaching out, telling me your concerns, because when I vote on the floor, I'm representing District 10, but every time I make a vote, it's going to impact the state of Kansas. So I would really like to hear your perspectives on issues, and maybe one thing might be good for my district, which is in a more urban northeastern of Kansas, but it might be detrimental to the western side of Kansas in rural area. Maybe it might, put in jeopardy the rural life of agricultural for Kansas, which is one of our biggest economic money-making industry. And, those are things I like to hear from, is from the people. People, in this space of organization that might be not in Kansas. I appreciate the kind messages of support. Those are the ones that get me through the day. Sometimes we'll be having a tough week and I get a really nice message saying, you've inspired me. Even people ask me, like, where do I even start? I want to run for office, or I'm thinking about it. I'm more than happy to talk to you, like, on the weekend. This is one of my, favorite things to do. And I know once I won my primary and I ran unopposed in the general, Congresswoman Deb Haaland specifically told me to, like she said, lead the ladder down. You need to help out your community. You need to get more, people involved in the democratic process. And, Congresswoman Davis too is a big advocate of voting rights. So I'm trying to do my work, make our aunties proud. But yeah, those are a couple of ways, and I'm open to more solutions and ideas.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think you really make a great distinction that a lot of folks don't realize, is that although you're representing District 10, your voice contributes to the whole of Kansas. And you're right, you need to hear from everybody when it comes to certain pieces of legislation that can affect, one group more or create a disparity over others, and have those meaningful conversations. Because making decisions, there's a huge responsibility when making decisions. I give you so much love as you move forward with this role and this journey, because it's like taking care of babies in a way. You are taking care of babies. We need more of you. We need more of us to run. And so are you ready to, like, make asks to other community leaders that you feel should run for office? And what might you say to them?
Yeah, there's a lot of people, even, my one of my campaign managers, she just graduated high school. We went to the same high school. She's 19. I'm like, you should run for office. She's like, I need to go to college first. So I'm trying to help her get on one of our city boards too. That's another way to get involved, is to apply for a board position in your city. Our board, we have a lot of boards here in the city of Lawrence, and I got asked into be in one, and I'm lucky that one of mine is diverse and from people who come from these backgrounds. But sometimes there's not a lot of young representation, young voices, and I like to say a lot of our policies that we vote on, if they're bad, the younger people have to suffer the consequences of it. And then when they grow old, they'll have to fix it. So I think the value of the youth voice input is always extremely important. Like I said today in my Health and Human Services Committee, I asked a question. We were going through mental health modernization, and there's a lot of, youth suicide prevention and youth crisis prevention. And I asked them, I was like, there's a lot of youth programs. Have you asked the youth if this is, what they want? Is this how they want to go about it? Because it's going to be for them. And they're like, oh no, we didn't even think about it. I was like, okay, well, that's something we can work on. I'm more than happy to work on. And, going forward, I'm more than happy to help. I feel like I am not an expert at anything of campaign and politics, but I'm more than happy to offer my support to help you, find a campaign manager, and where do you even start? Those are some really good questions, and I'm more than happy to answer. No question is a dumb question too.
Right.
Even like, how much do I get paid? It's like nothing,
Right.
but it's more.
That's what I think we also need to change, because there's there's places that their legislators make a livable wage, and then there's places, I mean, I can tell you in North Dakota, our legislators don't make a livable wage, and they're expected to serve, every other year for 80 days straight, in a way that is that conducive to family life? Who knows? It's conversations we have to have about our governance and how we lead within our communities. But Advanced Native Political Leadership is also here to help you put that ladder down, up, raise the ladder down. How did you say that?
Either way.
Put the ladder there. And train people. We're wanting to recruit 100 Native folks right now to run for office, and we're in the process of taking that information right now. So if you go to Advanced Native Political Leadership, our website or any of our social media sites, we've got a survey up right now that's asking you, some of these questions. What do you want to specialize in? What do you have questions about when it comes to running for office? And sign up for our trainings as soon as they come available. So follow us if you're not following us already on other social media sites, and we can post that for you as well. Our time is coming to a close, Representative Haswood, and I really, really appreciate you making time for us, especially in your first session, as a legislator in Kansas. But is there any closing comments you would like to make for our audience here?
I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Today has been such a historic day. I think a lot of us are filled with joy. So take that in, because there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done, especially with, I think I'm most excited for Representative Holland, Congresswoman Holland, in her new position coming up. But I think, I always tell people that I'm not going to be in this position, for a long time. So I need you guys to, start training and to start thinking about, taking that next step for your community, and to represent your community, to represent the Indigenous voice. There will be a time where I'm going to hang up my hat on this, and I still want to get my PhD. There's still a lot of things I need to do. I need to have a family and kids. So when that time comes, and there's more room for more Indigenous peoples, just because there's 3 of us in the Kansas State Legislature doesn't mean that's enough. That's enough. That's the quote.
Right.
No, we don't have any Indigenous men, Indigenous non-binary people. There's still so much more work that needs to be done. And I feel like, a lot of times, like Representative Dr. Victors, Representative Byers, and I, we're not on the same committees at the same time. So we're still having to speak up for Indigenous peoples in these spaces where it's often not present. And then there's so many committees that there's probably a good handful that none of us are in. And then, so I just want to tell everybody that you can do it. If you have the smallest ounce of curiosity for running for office, you should do it. But there's also the campaign side of making phone calls. That was one of the biggest things that helped my campaign, especially during the pandemic where we couldn't go door to door. Phone calls was one of the biggest things, and just helping that process when it comes. But also, how do you start? Just show up in your community. Maybe you don't have all these great questions. One of my favorite questions I would ask is, what are you doing for the Native Indigenous communities for us? What are you doing for the federally recognized tribes, the state recognized tribes? 9 out of 10 times they won't know. They'll say, oh, I don't know. And that's where you can take the time to educate your elected leaders and officials and make that connection, because now politicians don't like to look dumb. So they'll always remember you. But you can do it. I believe in you. If you have any questions, let me know. Hit me up, hit my DMs up, email me, give me a phone call. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
I'm so grateful that you've made yourself available, and this time is so beneficial for those who are newly elected themselves or who want to run for office, and just hearing your experience. We're so grateful and appreciative of your time. We want to thank everybody for joining us now and throughout the follows on this video, and make sure that you pay attention to future videos that we're going to be bringing forward, and watch us for those onboarding trainings that we're going to be bringing forward to all of you, but Native candidates running for our building Native power. Thanks so much, everybody.